Cool. So, Ollie Horton, thank you for being here again.
Ah, mate, it's the trilogy, isn't it?
The trilogy. I'm excited. But this time, not that the first two weren't useful, because they were definitely useful for us, but this time I want to use your knowledge and your expertise in a slightly selfish way for those listening to this, because I know that you're off to, in fact, tell me, what are you off to do? What's changing in your life?
Well, I'm actually coming away from personal training for the time being and joining the army full time as an officer. I managed to get into Sandhurst, which is like well, I guess they could call it the best leadership school in the world, but it's basically just where you train to become a military officer. So that's where I will be going. So I'm taking a little sidestep away from my training. I'll still be training myself, obviously, like I have to keep fit, but actually coaching one to one, I'll take a step away from that for a while. Same with the podcasting, whilst focus on that training, and then hopefully at some point in the future I can swoop back in and give it another shot. But yeah, for now, my whole life is just sort of in limbo. I've moved house, all of that changes, so yeah, it's a pretty tricky time.
How did it, I'm intrigued because I actually don't know the context here. How did this come about? Because last time we chatted, no, the first time we chatted was basically day one of full-time personal training. The second time we chatted, I know you mentioned that you were a reservist. You were kind of looking at it. It's almost like every time we talk, you're just a completely different person. So how did this chapter come about?
I feel like you're following me very closely through my journey. It's like we have like chats to each segment of my life. Do you know what it was? With the whole reservist thing, it's almost like imagine you're just dipping your toe like in the water and you just get a feel for it, and then over time you're like, oh, I could get involved in this. But the problem with the army is they have, and rightly or wrongly, I think it's quite a good thing. They have like age cut off. So if I didn't do it now, it would be I wouldn't be able to do it because I'm at the top end of the age bracket. So I thought, yeah, let's give it a shot and see what happens. And I think it's a good decision. Like with the whole personal training thing, there isn't an age limit on it, so I can come back. And hopefully, with a bit more experience further down the line, if I come back, then I will be better. But yeah, for now, it was just one of them. I just thought, why not? And I think decisions like that they come around so often in your life, and you can sometimes just pass them by without thinking about them. But I just thought, no, fuck it, let's go for it. Let's see what happens.
Do you know what I love about you? When we had that first chat and you were talking about becoming a personal trainer, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the story was basically you sat on your sofa and your girlfriend at the time said, why don't you do that? And you were like, yeah, fuck it, why not? And now you're about to become an officer in the army because the decision was, yeah, fuck it, why not?
Do you know, actually, weirdly, these decisions come at weird points in my life. So I was on my best friend, who was also an officer in the army. I was at one of their like parties that they had, and I was chatting to someone else there, and I was like, "Oh, I'm thinking of doing it, but I don't know. I think I'm a bit old." And he just looked me dead in the eye, and he just went, "Age is never an issue." And at that moment, I was like, "Fuck it, let's do it." And it's like these weird little conversations that I have, which steer me throughout life, sure. But yeah, it's weird. Maybe everyone can either take something from that, either they don't make drastic decisions or make drastic decisions and see what happens. I know you've had some in your life.
So that's a really interesting segue because you've done me a massive favor by helping me land this first question now. Because what I want to talk about today is the entire framework of kind of feeling like you're not very fit and healthy and active and kind of doing the things you want to do, and how somebody listening to this who identifies with that kind of description can go about getting started. So this isn't turning into a mad power lifter. This is just being a bit more active, right? And I feel like for anybody to begin on that path, whether or not they feel that they want to right this second, they need to have one of those kind of why moments where something goes off in their mind where they think this is the moment when I switch. How do you recommend somebody decides whether they're actually ready for that yet?
I think there's a few things, and I don't like. Please interrupt me if I start rambling, but I get quite passionate about this stuff. So I'll try to keep it short and sweet. But I think there's multiple reasons why people want to become fitter, but you can only do it when you're ready to do it. And I think a common mistake a lot of people make is they'll go, right, 1st of January or 1st of February or Monday, I'm going to start this. But they're not actually fully in it. They're just doing it because they think they should do it. And what I recommend is, and I had a podcast about this and someone else said it. I'm going to mess this up because I can't remember who said it, but You're meant to ask yourself why 7 times, and around the fifth time of asking yourself why, you'll get to the actual underlying reason. So, for example, people come to me in the gym and they'll go, "Oh, I want to lose weight," and I'll be like, "Why?" "Oh, because I want to fit in a pair of jeans I haven't fitted in for 10 years." "Okay, why?" And eventually, you get to the underlying factor that they were happy 10 years ago and they're not happy now, and they want to fit in those jeans or whatever it may be. But I think a really good place to start, and some people like writing it down, or just literally sit there and just ask yourself why you want to do something. And then when you find that reason, it's so much easier to create like a lifestyle or a training program or habits that fit in around that, rather than just going, "I want to be fitter," because it's so subjective, and it's just like, well, where do you finish? If you say I want to become a size 10 or I want to fit in 32-inch jeans, brilliant. Then what? There's no end goal. The goalpost just keeps shifting. You need to have a. I'm not going to say you need a specific goal. You don't, but you need to have a real reason why you're doing it to ingrain those habits. I hope that makes sense.
100%. That's really interesting. Where did your why begin then? Because I imagine that everybody's why shifts a bunch of times throughout life as they go. I mean, you're a perfect example, right? Your goals have very much changed. And so suddenly being fit being fit was your paycheck before, and it's now incredibly important with what you're about to go and do. I imagine it's different to your original why, but how did you arrive at your original why when you're like, you know what, I'm going to take this fitness thing seriously? I mean, as an individual, not as a personal trainer.
What I'm about to say, I think I would argue that 90% of personal trainers have the same issue, is that it all started with a body dysmorphia issue, which a confidence slash body dysmorphia issue. So you have this issue where you don't feel like you don't look good, even though you look good and you're fit and you're healthy and you're robust. You see people, social media, it was magazines for me back in the day because I'm old. But it's like you look at magazines and you see people with six packs winning shows, or Steve Cook, prime example, Sean Stafford. You see them in like they're chiseled Greek gods, and you're like, I want to look like that. But you train and train and train, and you don't even realise it's unattainable. So then you train more and more and more, and you become like obsessed. I don't like to use. Oh, sorry. I don't like to use the term obsessed as a bad thing because I don't think it is. But you become so ingrained in this. I need to look like that to be happy, that you almost end up just living this like fitness lifestyle. But then what happens weirdly is you come out the other side and you realise, actually, I can look good without sacrificing too much. And then you're like, oh, it's taken me 6 years to get to that point. If I became a personal trainer, I could tell someone that and it only take them 2 months to get out of their rut. And that's basically how I fell into it, is it took me so long to get away from this issue that I had with my body that I was like, I can actually help people get over this quicker, and actually just be like, look, you don't need to do that. And all those mistakes, I suppose it's the same with like business course and stuff, like learn from my mistakes and then you won't have to go through it all. But people think when you say that you're just being a charlatan, but you're not. Some people are, but I'm trying not to. I think it's important that people realise that what you see on it's so cliched now, what you see on Instagram or the TV or films or something, you don't need to look like that to be happy. As long as you're fit and you're healthy and you can do what you need to do, I don't see a problem. If you have children, you don't need a fucking six pack and all of that. As long as you can like play with them all day and not be knackered, that for me is a win. Or like for yourself, as long as you can go through a full day of work without like slumping in energy crashes and living off Red Bull, like that's a win. And it's so subjective and relative to individuals that's what they need to focus on, is their own little race, rather than comparing all the time. Because that's what I did, and that's what I fucked up on, is just constantly comparing.
And so if we're helping people shrink down that 6-year mammoth mountain that they have in front of them right now into a few months within which time they can kind of get started and kind of understand what they're doing, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you made in those 6 years, or that you've seen your personal training clients make, that you think people really need to avoid?
Bloody hell, that's a tough question. Okay, let's assume let's assume that whoever's listening to this already has their why sorted. So that would obviously be number one, but I'm going to assume that they've already got that why sorted. So they're in this journey, okay? So like, let's say they're getting married in 3 months, right? That's nipped. They've got their reason to work out. So the first thing I'd say is don't. We literally spoke about this before we came on air, but don't try and just go from 0 to 100. If you haven't worked out regularly for, say, I don't know, 5 years, you cannot go from doing nothing to 5-6 days a week straight away. So all that will happen is just unsustainable. You'll just crash. You'll be able to do it for 2 or 3, 4 weeks, and then you'll be like, nah. So I would say start slow would be my number one. I would say I sometimes like using steps, but what I would say is just try and be outside more. Like, don't actively go, I'm going to get 10,000 steps. Just be like, I'm going to go outside for a bit. Because for me, that it sort of plays into each other. If you're outside more, you will naturally move more. So I always said that to my clients. I was like, just try and get outside as much as you can. If you can nick 20 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at lunch, half an hour in the evening, all of a sudden you're outside for an hour more a day than what you were. And I can guarantee in that hour, you're not going to be sat there on the ground on your phone. You'll be actively you'll be moving a bit more. So I'd say that's the second one. And I'd say the third one, it sounds so simple, but just drink more water. Because exactly like you're doing now, it's amazing how many people don't. And then from that, you will naturally eat a little bit less. You'll probably sleep a bit better. You're more hydrated, you're more alert, less coffee. It all sort of feeds in. So my top 3 would be those 3. But obviously, the list is as long as your arm on what to do. But if someone's starting out, I would say those 3 things would be good.
And so the person listening right now, they've decided their why. They've got a fairly good idea of the kind of things they need to cut out or do more of as a foundation. Now, I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that there are going to be 2 groups of people. And I'm more interested perhaps in the second because there's more hesitancy there, right? The first is someone who's been to the gym before and they just kind of slipped out of it because something happened in life and so they stopped going. They're all good. They know where the gym is. They know how to get there. They're comfortable walking in. But lots of people, and I know that I was definitely like this back in 2019 when I first stepped foot in a gym, before I even needed to care about my workout plan, before I even needed to care what that machine over there did, I was worried about the machine in my head, which was having a fucking breakdown about the idea of having to go in a gym. How do you help people overcome that inertia of just finding the confidence to step in that building before they do anything?
I think, again, I don't think you can force it. I think you have to be ready in yourself to do it. So you have to be you have to go, right, I'm going to go to the gym today. You can't just be like, you have to be ready in yourself. I know I keep saying it, but that's the first thing. But a couple of things you can do to help that is if you have a really good friend who actively goes a lot to the gym, that's quite a good place to start because they just sort of, it makes you feel at home. You feel comfortable, they can show you a couple of bits. And the first couple of times you go to the gym, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. It really doesn't. It's more of a confidence builder. So don't worry about that. Just try and get in and do 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then come out. And then that's a win because that doesn't feel like a failure then. Or, use Instagram. You can use the search tool, the location tool on Instagram, find local gyms in your area, and look at what they're doing, because gyms nowadays, if they're not putting, videos daily on their Instagram, probably not the place you want to go. The ones who are actively looking to be better and looking to lead will always have stories of their classes and stuff, and you can get a feel for the gym without actually stepping in it, and you could even message them, what sort of classes do you do? Can I come and try one out? Again, classes are a great place to start because you can actively have dialogue with the gym owner and say, look, I'm a bit nervous. And you could do it hiding behind a screen in essence. You don't have to talk to them face to face. I'm a bit nervous. I'm not really sure what I'm doing. And they can go, yeah, no worries. Come down 10 minutes before. We'll have a chat. There's other people who have done nothing, stuff like that. So that's number two. And obviously the third one is get a PT. Again, that can be quite scary for people because they're not sure who. So again, excuse me, you can use Instagram, you can use Facebook, you can see who you're going to work with in essence. And I think obviously I did it. I know you do it. It's nowadays if PTs aren't talking to the camera, they're going to lose out on sales. And this isn't me being a fucking business guru because I'm not. But for me, if a client came to me and said, "Oh, I saw you on your Instagram stories. Like I really feel like we work together," that's better. So I would say, yeah, use what you have at your disposal. Use your social media. Ask around the local community and find a gym. If you are nervous about going, find a gym that you can relate to and that has sort of like the same ethos as you. There's one that I go to now. Well, I've been worked at in the past, and then I know there's like March On have a great Instagram account as well. And those gyms, they make a community online, and then it draws people into the gym, and it makes it feel like a very safe space. So yeah, that's what I'd say. I know I went around the houses there.
No, that was interesting. And not to directly contradict what you just said, but something to add to that, which I found super helpful in those first few months of trying to find it. I mean, I'm split between Corby and Wales anyway, so I had to really find two gyms. And my biggest fear factor back then was I didn't want to walk into a gym and feel like it was obvious that I was the new guy, if that made sense. And so there were 3 gyms that I tried over that period. And the one that really stuck, it was only a pure gym, I'm not saying it's incredible, but the one that really stuck, I think there's an interesting reason for it if you're somebody who is fearing going into the gym for the first time because it feels like people are looking at you. And that is that in the council gym here in Wales, which I joined, a big Valleys Welshman gave me an induction and asked all these awkward questions, and there was like a physical human barrier, and that felt like a big fucking deal to overcome. Didn't like that. The second one was I joined, terrible idea, I joined an Anytime Fitness through Groupon. And you go in there, and before you're even allowed into the gym, there's like not only a human, but a human selling to you and like trying to get you to join this direct debit thing for 12 months and la la la. But then the Pure Gym thing, and I'm sure there are a bunch of other commercial gym chains out there who do this. You sign up online, you don't speak to anyone, you type in your little code, you go in, nobody chats to you, and nobody actually knows it's your first time there, so you can then take it at your own pace that way. I know it's the complete opposite advice to what you gave, but for me personally, as somebody who was definitely way more introverted back then, having that cloak of anonymity to just slide in without having to talk to anyone, that really helped.
No, absolutely. And I think it's finding what works for you. So what works for the individual, and I think that's what the most important thing is. And some people prefer that class structure and training with other people, and some people prefer doing it on their own. And if you can find what works for you, then fucking brilliant, crack on with that.
So let's say our listener has gone to the gym, they've been a couple of times, they got some confidence, and now they're like, right, okay, well, I have this big why, I have this big goal, and I have no bloody idea how to reach it. And we'll come on to diet and nutrition shortly because I appreciate that that's probably the biggest piece of the puzzle. But in this backwards way that I structured the questions, let's talk about a training routine first, right? You can Google weight loss training routine and there's like 2.1 million results. Build muscle training routine, fucking loads of results. And everything says something different, right? Every result is trying to be unique and trying to kind of pull on this different mechanism to tell you that this is the way to do it. So you kind of subscribe to this ideology. Let's strip it right back. Somebody wants to lose a bit of weight and gain a bit of muscle and they got a few months to do it. How should they be attacking that?
Like you say, there's a million ways to skin a cat. But for me, I run off 2 principles. I run off consistency. So the more you can do it, the better. That's not saying you have to do it 7 days a week, but that is full body, train your full body 3 times a week, done. And the second one is what I call the KISS principle, which is like keep it simple, stupid. Like, and the problem is simplicity doesn't sell. So you go on, like you say, so let's go a male and a female example. Male, how to build a bigger chest. Female, how to build a bigger bum. Sorry if I'm being misogynistic. Don't mean to be. That's just the way it is, right? So you have these people on Instagram, both sides, sign up to my 12-week chest building program. And they're all they're doing is rebranding something to sell it. The same with these women who try and, grow bigger glutes, and they have you doing these stupid fucking banded exercise on a air stepper. And it's like, you don't need to do that. The way I see it is train your full body. So instead of thinking about muscles, think about movements. So a squat, like a hinge, so lift something off the floor, like pull something towards you, push something away from you, lift something above your head, pull something down from above. And then just get strong in those movements, rather than thinking, I'm going to do chest press, incline flies, lower fly, all that shit. Just pick like 5 or 6 movements that cover all the major movements, and then just get strong in them over 2 to 3 sets, and then just do that 3 times a week. And I would say if you live by that model for the first even 3 to 4 years of your training, maybe 2 to 3 years of your training, you won't go far wrong. And then sleep enough.
And so before we come on to calorie expenditure, I want to, and this may be a complete misconception of mine, but something that I have observed over the years is that there's this weird, I think, misconception about how you lose weight, right? Which is you see people who go into the gym and we can assume their target is I want to lose weight, and they just do cardio. They just walk on a treadmill for 45 minutes. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but do you think there's a case to be made, or is there a case to be made for the fact that actually progressive overload training is good for all, and doing a Stairmaster twice a week isn't as effective as perhaps society has told us it is? Does that make sense? Like, it seems to be there are 2 camps of people. A group of people who are like,
100%.
let me build a body, they go and do weight training, and a group of people who think, okay, well, I need to lose weight, and Instagram's told me that the way to lose weight is kind of ultra marathon, so I'm going to do that on a treadmill. Does that make sense?
I think, 100%. But I think there's a case to be made for both camps, really. And I think what we're seeing in the fitness industry now is a shift towards what we call this mixed modality training, which encompasses both over an hour period. So you look to get strong and do your aerobic work in the same session. And if I talk from personal experience, I've fallen into both camps in the past. One that just does cardio, one that just lift weights. And I think there's definitely a case to be made for having both in. Like, if you want to get bigger, you will find it much easier if you have a good cardiovascular base to begin with. And likewise, if you want to lose weight, you will find it easier and probably more sustainable if you lift weights. So I would always recommend to get a little bit of both in there if you can. But you're right, you don't need to be spending 2 to 3 hours a week on a stepper, or running 5 miles a day to lose weight. If you like running, then run. If you like rowing, then row. If you like squatting, then squat. But then try and incorporate a little bit of other things as well. But this brings me on to a nice point, and sorry if this is a bit of a segue, but what a lot of people forget as well is that you don't just have to go to the gym in order to be fit and healthy. And what I mean by that is find what works for you. Like, if you love playing squash, then fucking play squash. If you love to go out in the hills hiking, then do that. Like, you don't have to go to the gym and stand on a treadmill in order to win in the fitness game. Like, just do what you enjoy, and then have to do a little bit of what you don't enjoy, just to get that nice rounded approach to it. But yeah, I definitely think there's a case to be made for both cardio and weights.
And so I want to come on to this later, but I'm going to dip into it now because you've just said something which resonates, which is there are things in the gym, namely things from the waist up, which are fine for me. Don't mind them. Easy. Walk in, have a great time. And there are other days in the gym, namely from the waist down, where I'm like, fuck this, and I'll do everything to put it off. And it just feels miserable, right? And I have yet to overcome the resistance that my brain gives me on those days. And it's different for everyone, right? I speak to some people and they're like, oh my God, I hate training arms. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I do in the gym. How do you go about teaching yourself to be better at just sucking up the bad days? Is there any methods that you found over the years?
Weirdly, no. I don't think there is, but I think it makes the good days more fun, knowing that you've done it. What I tended to do, and more so I do now, is to do the hardest things at the beginning of the week. So I'll always train legs on a Monday. Just purely, I don't know why. I don't know if it's like a weird placebo effect, but I just think if you get it, if you do it on a Monday, it just sort of, I don't know, it makes a week's training flow a bit nicer because you're not doing them, trying to do them on a Friday when you're tired. 9 times out of 10, you're probably more rested on a Monday than what you're on a Friday. So I would say try and do the hardest things at the beginning of the session. And this is the beauty of training full body in a singular session and not just legs, is you can be like, oh, I've got 3 sets of squats, but they'll only take me 10 minutes, and then I'm doing bench press. So I can just get them out of the way. And you can sort of cheat a workout by training everything in one session, because you're not going in going, oh, I have an hour of legs and I really don't want to do it, so I won't do anything. You'll go, I can manage 10 minutes of squats or 2 sets of squats, and that's like a win. Because if I do that 3 times a week, that's a win. Because let's face it, it's usually legs that people don't like to train, isn't it? And it's usually like the quads that people don't like because it hurts, and it does. But if you can sort of cheat by doing, a little bit at the beginning, 2 to 3 sets, and do that 3 times a week, it doesn't really matter what else you do because you've just won.
Do you know something else that I've found to be useful actually really recently? So my friend Chloe called me out a few months ago when I was like, it's mad because I do a bench press and I can't do more than 35 kg ever. And it's been the same for like 3 years. And she's like, chatting shit. Yes, you can. It's just in your head. And so I gave it a go and I'm up to like 55 now, I think. And the second I started to gamify it, the same with squats, gamifying it, the same with leg press, gamifying it, like, I don't actually believe I can do X, so I'm going to fucking force myself to do X. It's unbelievable how much more, it's almost like I have skin in the game, and I'm not just inflicting suffering on myself, but actually I'm leaning into a target that I have. And those micro targets, as arbitrary as they are, because frankly, I don't fucking care what I can bench press. Like, I don't. It makes no difference to my life. However, when I'm in those 4 walls in the gym, it means everything, because it's a little goal I've had.
No, I completely agree, and I think that's where like following a program, no matter how simple it is, can really help, because you're actively going, oh, so I hit 60 for 5 this week, so if I can do 62 and a half for 5, or 60 for 6, or if I can slow the reps down, or whatever it is, any form of progression, because let's remember that progressions don't just have to be numerical. They can be, you can get a few more reps, or you can do another set, or you can just slow the reps right down. So if you can do 5 reps at, say, 50, and you can do them quite quickly, if you slow them down so you're lowering that weight over 4 seconds, that's a progression in itself, because you've suddenly made the set 4 times as long. So all of those intricate little progressions that you make should always be classed as wins. It doesn't always have to be more weight, more weight, more weight. So like, just slow it all right down. But I know what you mean, like those little wins, unbelievable to think about. And the feeling you get when you do that is just second to none, isn't it? When you hit that PB.
I know we had this conversation the other day. I did a pull-up for the first time the other day, and I was gassed for a week. Like, there's nobody I didn't tell I just did a pull-up. And it's ridiculous, because like I say, when you're outside of those 4 walls, like I told Richard, my business partner, and he's like, okay, cool. But I'm like, are you mad? Like, and it's just funny, because I probably went, it would have been between the 2 lockdowns when I was in the gym, but I wasn't really following a program, and so there wasn't any like detailed recorded progressive overload. That I just kind of hit this rut. And maybe, the people listening to this are going to be a few months too early to want this advice now, but it'd be interesting to talk or hear your thoughts on the importance of tracking everything you do in the gym, the importance of constantly pushing that needle, so that you don't do what I did, which is become convinced that like, this number on the bar is what I can lift, so I should never lift more, and then just don't progress, and then get bored, and then stop going.
I'm sort of in 2 camps on this, and I don't mean to sit on the fence. So I've done both, where I've tracked everything religiously, and then I've been where I've tracked nothing. And I really do think there's a case to be made of somewhere in the middle, because I don't believe that, Joe Bloggs, who works 45 hours a week, has 2 kids, has quite a stressful life to begin with, and just wants to get a bit fitter. I don't believe they have to track everything. I just think there's a case to be made for tracking some things, but not everything. And what I like to do, and this is just me personally, is each session I'll have just one key movement, so a key lift, I call it, It could be like, say, a squat or a bench press or a pull up or a deadlift, and that's the one thing for that session that I track, and then the rest of it I just go off feel. So I come into the gym and I could be like, oh, feeling pretty beat up today. I'm just going to really attack this set of squats, try and beat last week, and then I'm just going to do a little bit of anything for the rest of the session. And I think just by stripping it right down and just having that one thing that you can track, it really reduces the mental stress and the overwhelm as well. Because if you go into a full session and you're literally trying to track the exact reps and sets that you did on a bicep curl last week, you're just going to stress yourself out. And it's all right if fucking professional bodybuilders say that, because that's their job. They live and breathe it, and they're a different breed. But if you, as a standard civilian, I don't personally believe you need to track everything. I think you need to have an understanding of what you lifted on those big compound lifts, what we call those multi-joint lifts. And then if you can progress them over time, then fantastic. But don't worry about, like I said, what you're doing for bicep curls or, sit-ups or something. It's just, that stuff is pretty irrelevant.
Do you know what's really interesting about that? So as somebody who has for a few months tracked every single rep and every single weight on every single movement, every single day I go to the gym, you've just said something there that has stuck out so much as bloody true, and yet I've never noticed it, which is like, if I'm trying to do a squat and I want the weight to be a bit higher than a few weeks ago, that makes sense. And if it doesn't go that way, it also makes sense because it's a big movement and I understand that my body can't really cope with that and la la la. If I'm doing like bicep curls, that's actually the one. If I'm doing bicep curls, and maybe I had a set of 12 last week and it was fine, it was cool, and I've only squeezed out 8, rather than, A, you make a good point, there's actually really no need to record that in that much detail in my case, but B, because I know I didn't reach it, although it's like such a granular movement and exercise, I'm like, what the fuck? And I leave the gym feeling a failure. It's mad because I've never clocked that.
And that's what it is. If you feel like you failed, even though you haven't, because the win in itself is going to the gym and pushing yourself. That is the win. You've gone to the gym and it doesn't matter if you've lifted the same as you did last week. It's the fact that you've been, but you coming away thinking, I only did 7 bicep curls when last week I did 9. There's so many variables that can cause that. And the fact that you come away feeling beat up, it says it all really, doesn't it? Like, and that's why I say, like, stuff like that, just have a bit of fun with things like that. Just have a bit of fun with your arms and stuff, and just worry about the big lifts, and it will make your gym going experience a lot smoother and a lot better consistently over time, which is what we're always aiming for.
And so is there, whether you're doing full body or splitting it in some way, is there a case to be made for big important lifts first and then the shit that you're not really recording but would like to do afterwards? So like focus on the big things, then squeeze out what you can. Is that right?
No. Oh my God. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think it's important to be adequately, this is going to sound like such like a PE teacher thing to say, but it is important to be adequately like mentally and physically prepared before you hit those lifts. So a warm up isn't just about your body being warm, it's also about like being in the right place mentally. Like you're in the quote unquote zone. I can't believe I just said that, but you are. So I think there's a case to be made for whatever that big lift is, doing a lot of the same movement but very light weights to begin with, just to get your mind like thinking, okay, I'm going to do this, and then building up into it slowly. So don't walk into the gym fresh out the car and just try and whack like 70 kilos on a bar and try and squat it, because that just won't end well. Like build up nice and slowly, but yeah, always do your big lifts first, because they're the most dangerous and they require the most, mental sort of capacity in order to lift them. You require a lot of brain power in order to do like a squat. It's not just a case of moving up and down. You're thinking, right, I have to keep my core tight, I have to keep that bar in that position, I have to keep my foot stance like this. Like, it's a lot going on. And to try and do that at the end of a session after you've done X, Y, and Z is pretty hard. So yeah, always do them. Always do them at the beginning. And then as you get towards the end of a session, think about like areas, like think about safe exercises or things that aren't going to hurt you. Like bicep curls, like if you can't lift a dumbbell, you're just going to drop it, aren't you? It's not really going to to injure anyone. Whereas, like, if you're squatting and you can't lift that bar's coming down on you and you're getting crushed. So, yeah, always do the most risky exercises first, and then the easier ones at the back end of a workout, definitely.
I heard an interesting piece of advice the other day from a friend of mine, Will, who I didn't realise he's only been going to the gym for years. He's absolutely fucking wham if he's listening. He's a big old boy. But he said that something that he's done for these bigger lifts, almost as a mental warm-up, and that's how I got onto this in my mind just now, because it's something I've never really considered, but you and him have both said something similar now in the space of a week. He will do literal visualization. Like, he's lying on a bench and he's about to pick up a bar and it's heavy and he's never lifted this before, and he'll literally close his eyes and imagine the rep going really well and tell himself that this is only slightly heavier than before and he did it last time, and all of this kind of mental acrobatics, which seems so detached from a physical lifting of an object, and yet it sounds like both of you are saying actually the mentality is just important as the physicality.
I think to an extent it is, definitely, because I think you're putting yourself in that sort of scenario before you've actually done it. I know Formula One drivers have been notoriously, like, documented in lying there on the floor and going through each turn. And I guess the case, I know that's quite an extreme example, but I guess the case could be made. You know, if you visualize your gym session before you go into it, you're probably going to have a better session, because you're not just standing there going, what am I going to do next? You know, in your head, you've like, I've got this, I'm going to lift this on this, that's over there, I need that bit of equipment. So that is, it's just reducing all that overwhelm, and it's just giving you that mental clarity so you can just focus on the task at hand. And whether it's placebo or not, I do think that's sort of true. And, you know, you see a lot of powerlifters do it. You know, they really hype themselves up before the lift, and, you know, they're getting people to slap them on the back and stuff. And I guess there is a case to be made for that sort of aggression and that visualization and all of it going into that one movement. So yeah, I would say so.
And so diet is, of course, arguably the biggest component in all of this, whether somebody's looking to lose weight or build muscle, or just have better balanced energy throughout the day, to speak to some of the examples that you used before. I feel like, not to sound like I'm parroting James Smith, because I often parrot James Smith. However, I feel like society as a whole, exactly. I feel like society as a whole has a misconception as to how you actually go about eliciting weight loss or weight gain, right? And I don't know how he'll feel about me using this example, but I was talking to my brother a few months ago, and we were talking about, it was literally in January when I started revisiting, like, actually tracking my food and all this stuff. And he was like, oh, it looks like you've gained a bit of weight. And I'm like, yeah, I've just been like, I'd showed him what I was doing. Like, this is my protein target, just kind of following the rest with macros. And I'm like, that's how, like, weight gain and weight loss works. Like, if you ever want to lose weight, you just do this. You just have a few less calories than your maintenance level. If you ever want. And he was like, it's like, what? It's like, no, there's not like a program and a method and a shit. He didn't actually say this, but his answer was suggesting, like, it's not that simple. And I'm like, for sure, it's literally just that, right? So let's begin here, super, like, ground floor level. How do you go about losing or gaining weight? What are the mechanics of food?
Well, firstly, I am no nutritionist, so if I just have to put that in as like a caveat, that if you are actually struggling, like, psychologically, physiologically, then go and actually seek a dietitian, or I should call them a nutritionist, really, who actually is qualified in this. Like, obviously, with your level 3 personal training qualification and all the outside reading that one does, you have an understanding, but you're not qualified. So that's just a little caveat. But what I would say for someone who, so that, how can I go about phrasing this? So basically, if you think about it, you have sort of energy in and energy out, and if they're level, your body mass will stay the same. And the reason I say body mass is because weight fluctuates throughout the day, being it how your sleep has been, if you've trained, your water, how many times you've been to the toilet, whatever the stress levels, whatever it can be, your weight will fluctuate. So if your energy levels are the same, your body mass will stay the same. Now, if you consume more calories than what you're actively burning through exercise and just generally living, then you will gain a bit of body fat over time. And likewise, the other way around, you will lose a bit of body fat over time. Now, there is an argument that says not that all calories are not equal. I think it's a bit of a dark hole to go down. So for the purpose of this, if you claim that all calories are equal, it makes it a lot easier. And what you really, if we use an example of someone who wants to lose weight, what you're actually looking to do is obviously to eat less, or your energy to be in a negative balance. And you can do that through either A, expending more, or B, eating less. Now, what I would always recommend is either when dieting or trying to lose body fat, you want to be eating as much as possible and moving as little as possible. So you only ever just want to slightly tip those scales. This whole notion of fucking cut 500 calories a day is bollocks. What you want is just like a slight decrease, because then that's sustainable over time. If you wouldn't notice now if I took 200 calories off your daily like food intake. So if you think for everything you eat in a day, if I just say just don't eat that curly whirly, you'll be like, I can do that. That's all right, I can do that. And that's all it is. That's all you're actually looking to do, is just a slight decrease. Whereas likewise the other way, if you want to put on a bit of muscle, you're only looking for a slight surplus. You don't want a massive one. You just want a real slight surplus. But again, like there's so many different holes you can go down, because I would never advocate someone to sort of try and burn off what they're eating, if that makes sense. So this notion of, I've eaten this cookie, now I need to go and burn 500 calories in the gym, or I've burnt 500 calories in the gym, let me eat that back. Don't fall into that trap. I mean, I don't know how much depth you want to go into on this.
So I think the next logical place to go, with that understanding in mind, is we now know that we need a calorie number, which is either a maintenance, a deficit, or a surplus. How do we go about finding that? What is the basic mechanism, and what kind of surplus and or deficit, forgot the word there, should we be aiming for to move progressively but sustainably towards our goals?
Again, there's so many. If you type in, what we're looking for is our total daily energy expenditure, which basically takes into account how many calories you need just to live. So if you were to lie in a bed all day and not move, how many calories you need just to survive. Then it takes into account your activity levels. So if we look at someone like a bricklayer or a scaffolder, carrying heavy loads all day, 10 hours a day, every day, they're going to burn a lot throughout that day. Or someone who is very sedentary, we use an office worker, literally the only movement they have is a mouse and a keyboard, etc. I know that's very, bog standard, but if you take those two examples, one's going to be a lot lower than the other. So that's their total daily energy expenditure. And then from there, you want to I would always say, if you're looking to lose weight, just take 200 off that to begin with. Or if you're looking to gain weight, plus 200. But yeah, so the first thing to do, you can go online, there's so many, and it's just a rough calculation that gives you a starting number. Remember, that is just a start. From there, you want to stick to that number for at least 2 weeks. And that's consistency. That's not 3 days, have a pizza. Oh, I've done it for 3 days. Let's try and be as consistent as we can for 2 weeks and see what happens. And then make adjustments as needed. If we go too extreme too early, all that's going to happen is you're either A, not going to see the results you want because you'll be annoyed. B, you'll fall off the bandwagon because it's too extreme. And then you'll just be like, I give up. So what we want to do is just slightly tip those scales, like I said, and just do it consistently. And then hopefully, over time, you will see some form of weight loss or weight gain. If we're looking for weight loss, a nice sort of number to look for is sort of 0.5 kilo loss a week, because it's enough over time to sort of see a dramatic change. If you're very overweight to begin with, you could probably get away with 1 kilo a week, so it will fall off a lot quicker. But someone of like a quote unquote normal build looking to lose a little bit of body fat, you're looking at half a kilo a week. And the same if you're looking to gain. Now, obviously, muscle gain is a lot slower, but you can still work off that sort of half a kilo a week upwards. And over time, again, you want to see, that nice continued trajectory. But what you'll actually notice is you'll notice it going up and down, up and down, up and down. But there will be a nice correlation, hopefully, if doing it consistently.
And so here's a question that I didn't plan to ask, but it's a good one, not least because, so what I do, I measure my weight every morning, just when I step out of bed, first thing I do, and then trend it over a week, and then do the weekly average. How often should somebody because I only do it that often because I'm kind of like, I plug a lot of data into a spreadsheet about my life. If somebody just kind of cares a little bit, they just kind of slowly want to lose some weight, how often do you think is a good duration or a good interval by which you should measure your weight and actually take meaning from it, right? Because if it's twice a day, it's not going to mean anything. If it's twice a month, is that too little? Does that make sense? What's the sweet spot?
I think again, I'm not going to sit on the fence here. There's a lot of it depends, but it does, because it depends on how you can cope with it mentally. Because I know from talking from my personal experience and other clients I've had, they don't do well with even looking on the scales at all. So we completely take that tool away. And remember, all these things we use are just tools. There's no perfect way to do anything. So scale weight is just a tool. Now, if you can deal with seeing that number mentally and you don't get too worked up about it, then I would say every other day or every day is perfect. But like you said, then take an average. So you might go, Tuesday to Wednesday, you might, fucking gained 2 pounds. And it's like, oh, brilliant. What did you have for dinner last night? Did you train yesterday? Yeah, so you're going to be a little bit heavier. How was your sleep? Not great. Okay, so you're going to be a bit heavier. So yeah, like you say, take it over 5 or 7 days and then create an average over the week. Now, if you can't deal with that, scale weight mentally, or you struggle to come to terms with the idea is that you're losing weight or you need to gain weight or whatever, then take pictures. Because the old saying, picture speaks 1,000 words, is very true. And I would say again, every 2 to 3 days, the same time, in the same lighting if possible, take a picture. And it can be as literal as, prop your phone on the windowsill, set on a timer, a front shot and a back shot and a side shot, in your pants. Don't have to show anyone, but then stick with your gym routine, stick with your tracking, and then take another one, and then another one, and then another one. I can guarantee that over 2 months you'll look back on that first one and be like, oh, fuck. And what you might notice is the scale weight has only moved ever so slightly, but your pictures are so much different. So I would always recommend, before even thinking about weighing and stuff like that, I'd be like, just take nudes. Take nudes for yourself. Because I think they're honestly, I think they're the best. I think they're the best way to track any progression in the gym. You can obviously do like tape measurements and stuff, but I guess the answer to your question, going around the bush, is whatever you choose to do, try to do it as much as you can cope with, and then look at an average. Look at an average over the course of 2-3 months, and that will give you a better indicator than, like you say, every day. Because every day nothing will change, but over time, that's where you want to see a difference.
The pictures one is interesting actually, because it's something I haven't really done this time around, right? We call this gymming 2.0 post lockdown, but before the lockdowns, when I went to the gym for like 9 months consistently, I took a picture at the very beginning. Obviously I took some pictures throughout because the PT I was working with asked for them once a month or whatever it was, and I took a picture just before I then stopped going consistently. And this maybe comes back into the whole, I don't want to say body dysmorphia because it's not that extreme, right? But if you were to kind of do a blind test on me where you sat me down after those 9 months and said, have you made any progress? Genuinely, I'd probably say no. Like, I don't think I have. I look in the mirror, I see the same like small guy. When I look at those 2 pictures now, and I have to use the caveat that I was probably severely underweight BMI-wise on the first picture, it's fucking mental how much changes without you realizing it changes. And so it's almost like you're missing out on a really important motivational tool if you're not taking those pictures early on, even when it feels terrible, because when you're 7 months in and you need that little boost to say, actually, all that effort, those things that you don't want to do on that Thursday night when it's raining, they're working. it's mad. It's mad how effective that was at keeping me going.
It's so true. And also, I think it does work at that moment in time. But then also, say if you fall off this new and improved Sean fitness wagon now, and you take, I don't know, another 3 years where life gets in the way, you know, X, Y, Z, you can look back on those pictures and you could be like, well, I did it then, so I know I can do it now. And it's that it works for as well. So I honestly do believe that pictures are the way to go. But again, it's just whatever you can cope with. If you can cope with scale weight, brilliant. If you can cope with taking measurements of your waist, brilliant. If you can cope with pictures, brilliant. If you can't cope with any of them, that's fine. Just then it might be a good idea to focus on what you're doing in the gym. You know, am I lifting a bit more? Am I eating like what I should be? Am I, you know, trying to get a little bit fitter? And then the body will follow. It's just whatever your goal is, I guess. Which sounds very fence city, but it's not meant to be.
On the topic of measuring, then, I realised that I completely derailed the conversation away from food about 10 minutes ago. But I know that and let's ignore edge cases for a second, right? Because I'm definitely not qualified to talk on edge cases when it comes to things like eating disorders.
Sure.
But for the general population and potentially the majority of those listening right now, it might not be important to track certain movements in the gym. It might not be important to track your weight every single morning, but how important is it to track your food to make sure you're within that calorie range? And also, how should one go about doing that? What's the best app?
How important is it? I guess that would depend on how much value you put onto your goal. But if we use an example of someone who really wants to, then I would say, yeah, pretty important. I think everyone should do it at some point in their life, just to have an understanding of you know, what a calorie is, how it works, you know, what they're actually eating. Because no one would ever question you if you said, oh, you know, I'm going on holiday in 2 months, so I'm going to budget my money for it. I'm going to put a bit aside and just have a pot. Everyone would be like, oh, that's great, well done, Sean. If you go, I'm actually tracking my food, they go, why being weird? It has almost like this negative connotation to it, but it shouldn't. So, firstly, never feel like you can't do it. Like, always feel like tracking is fine, because it is fine. However, you don't have to do it for the rest of your life. Do it to get an understanding, and then you sort of know what your body's eating. That's a little tangent. So, I personally use MyFitnessPal. There are others out there. I've never used any others. That's what I use. I think it's good enough. And with regards to how like stringent you have to be, I personally don't think you have to be that stringent. I remember, like you said at the very beginning, you have your protein target, which is usually between, I would say, around 1.8 grams per kilo of body weight, if that makes sense. So if someone weighs 100 kilos, keep the maths nice and easy, then you could argue they need 180 grams of protein a day in order to build muscle, to sustain that. And it's always a good figure to aim for. So I would say, firstly, hit your protein as a minimum. And that can be done throughout various forms. Now, there's so many protein powders out there. If you struggle, it shouldn't really be an issue. Secondly, then just worry about your calories. For the average Joe on the street and stuff, worrying about carbs and fats, it's not really relevant. You will get enough throughout your general diet to not really worry about that. Obviously, you could look at like hormones and stuff, but that I wouldn't really worry about that for now. I'd say hit your protein, hit your calories, and then don't get overwhelmed by it. Because if you hit those two every day, you'll be in a bloody good place, guarantee it. So I would say and then when you're tracking and weighing stuff out, like you don't really need to go to the exact gram or whatever, as long as it's within 5 to 10. You're not going to be far off.
And then, how do I word this without getting a cease and desist letter from a supplement shake company with a green logo? what advice would you give to people who have been persuaded by their friend on Instagram who says, "Hey girl, that they definitely need this kind of this shake program, this product, this mechanism to lose weight because it's almost marketed. All of these products, we don't need to name them because everyone knows what we're talking about. They're marketed as if they're different, as if they are the answer, as if they have some sort of silver bullet which calorie restriction or surplus doesn't. Restriction is the wrong word there, but you know what I mean. How would you persuade somebody who has sold themselves the dream that they definitely need this shake or this snack or this bar that actually, to a certain extent, that's all nonsense. You can eat anything you want just within those parameters that you've previously set out.
I I think it's really hard to, because I think we've been so conditioned to sort of think, if you want to lose weight, then you have to do this. People get bemused and bewildered and almost dumbfounded when you say you can still eat whatever you want and lose weight. It's almost like I find it hard to comprehend, because, and you probably do too, because you understand it. But for someone who doesn't, if I tried to, tell one of the old ladies in my street that she could eat whatever she wanted and still lose those £5, she'd be like, "Well, I don't have to do slim fat." I nearly said it. I don't have to do a shake or whatever, or a certain diet that's been around for years, or that one where they meet in a village hall and stuff. I don't know. I don't think there is a way to tell people. I think they sort of have to figure it out themselves. But what really helps is seeing other people get results from doing it that way. So if you are that individual listening to this being like, "Oh, I want to lose weight, but I know I don't want to do that, but all my friends do it," try and be the person who goes, "Actually, I'm going to try something different and see what happens." Because at the end of the day, there's no rush. There are for some people, but there's no real rush to lose weight or to put weight on. I know we all want everything instantly, but the difference between doing it over 4 months and 5 months is pretty negligible. So try different things and find what works for you. And don't get me wrong, for some people, those things work. Bizarrely, they do. But I would never recommend it, because I think the idea of eating, foods that you like and enjoyable and taste good and have good nutrients in is far more beneficial mentally and physically than what a restrictive shake may be. Because let's not forget, a lot of it is mental as well. So if you're actually eating foods you enjoy, you're more likely to stick to it. You're more likely to lose weight. Then you're more likely to stick to it further. Good cycle. What's the other cycle? You don't like it, you give up, you fucking put weight on, you try it again, you don't like it, you give up. Other vicious cycle. So you want the good one, not the bad one.
And so our imaginary person listening who has somehow ticked all of these boxes so far has got their why. They've got the fundamentals. They started going to the gym. They're comfortable. They've got their training program.
Yeah.
They doing their food. They're going all right. Sleep and recovery. It seems paradoxical when you look from the outside looking in that doing nothing is really important to losing weight. Doing nothing is really important to being able to be active. Talk to me about the importance of rest and sleep.
Again, anyone who has done some form of lifting will have fallen down the hole of doing too much. You won't realise it at the time, and then 3 to 4 months in, you'll feel it, and you will feel fucked. But the importance of rest is probably arguably just important. And that's not me saying, you can not go to the gym 4 times a week and go, "No, I'm actually taking rest days this week," and do that every week. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I think sleep is arguably the most... Obviously, we all know it's important. You need sleep to live. But when you're lifting, exercising regularly, it becomes that little bit more important. Because as you know, when you go to the gym, you lift some weights. That, to put it in a very layman term, you lift weights, the muscle breaks down, it repairs slightly stronger and bigger. You lift weights again, it repairs, etc. It's that sleep and that rest when that's happening. So without that proper nutrition, that proper rest, you won't recover, and you won't get stronger, etc., etc. And then it becomes an overtraining issue. And if you imagine say imagine you have a graph and it just has a straight line along the x-axis, and every time you train, the line comes a little bit lower, and when you recover, it goes up a little bit lower, up a little bit. You want to get eventually back up to that same baseline, and to do that, you need rest. If you carry on training, you're just going to crash. So yeah, sleep 7 to 9 hours every night, and that doesn't mean that you can sit on your phone till 11 and expect then to sleep through till 6, 7 in the morning and be fine. Try and have like a little bit of sleep hygiene as well. And I don't want to sound like a parent to everyone, but as well as I do, try and come off your phone a little bit. Try not to drink coffee too late or energy drinks too late. Just little things like that. Try and wind down in the evening and just get better. Try and get better sleep. But the more you exercise, the more you hydrate, the better you eat, the better your sleep will be. So then you'll be able to train harder, etc., etc. And again, I want to caveat this because I know some people listening to this will have children as well. So if you have children and you're trying to do this, just do your best. It's easy for me as a single man to get 8 hours of sleep a night. That's quite easy. If you have children, you can't do that. So just do what you can do. If you can grab a nap with them in the afternoon, never feel guilty for doing that. Fucking go for it. If you can only get 4 hours a night, then adjust your training to suit that, because the priority should be, training isn't always everyone's priority. It can be a secondary, but yeah, as much rest is what's feasible.
I think, although conceptually I understood and believed all of this stuff, just before we started recording, I was telling you about my second failed 75 hard attempt, and a bunch of things happened at once, which made me have to just boot my ego out of the door, and for the first time ever, really, really accept that rest and recovery is a complete fucking non-negotiable. It isn't like a conceptually nice thing that's a good to have. I got today 42, I think, of 75 hard, and I was doing a stripped back version, but essentially trained every day for 42 days. Throw into week 5 to 6 of that the cold that I had, which I never really recovered from. I mean, I've hopefully edited it all out by the time someone listens to this, but 2.5 weeks later, I've been coughing during this whole chat. And then kind of coping mechanisms which slipped in of ignoring my caffeine rule, no caffeine after midday, and I was hammering coffees at 4 p.m. to stay awake. And then probably the closest thing I've ever had to real actual sleep deprivation these last couple of weeks, and my sleeping pattern was just fucked. All of that together, it's almost scary how, and don't get me wrong, it's an extreme example, I'm not suggesting anyone should go to the gym 42 days in a row for a silly internet challenge, but it's scary how quickly it slipped in. I went from buzzing and doing pull-ups last week to genuinely this weekend. If you listen to last week's podcast, my cognitive ability, my ability to actually string together sentences is so diminished. Crazy how quickly it happens. And so for the first time ever, I believe, not that I didn't believe, but I really believe that if you're not resting and recovering properly, you're actually doing yourself a disservice. You're not running faster towards the goal you think you are. You're actually running away from it.
It's so true. And just going off that point, so that's your sort of anecdotal effect of training too much and not resting enough. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap of more is better. And that's only something that I've come to realise sort of over the past, I was going as far as saying the past 2 years, that actually sometimes doing less is better because you can do it more consistently for a longer period of time. And I follow an online program, I pay for it. I enjoy it, and it keeps me in check by not doing too much because I just follow that. And it's someone else is worrying about my volume and what I'm lifting that day, and that's fine. I can deal with that. If I was left to my own devices, I would constantly in my head going, I need to do more, I need to do more, I need to do more. And so that is something that people go on with. If you think that you're doing too much, just 30, 40 quid a month, you can get someone to write you a group program. And it's just enough just to stop you doing too much, if that makes sense. Because as great as these people on Instagram doing these crazy challenges are, sometimes they're not for everyone. And sometimes they are too much, as you well found out. And the thing is, what happens is you got so buzzing doing those pull-ups, then you had this little crash and stuff, and now you're like, you'll go in and you'll beat yourself up about not being able to do what you did. But really, all it was is because you did too much too soon. So it goes back to the very first point we made. Slow and steady, keep it simple, consistency over time.
And so the second to last little milestone I want to touch on is actually the opposite of that, right? Because sometimes it's really easy to slip into the trap of doing too much. And other times, we've all experienced it, it's really hard to win the mental battle with yourself to actually stick to something for any number of reasons, right? It might be that you're not seeing progress. It might be that for external factors, you're not well rested, whatever it might be. Do you have, and I feel like I asked you this on the first conversation we had, I can't remember your answer, but do you have any kind of methods or tricks, for want of a better word, that you know work on you or some of your clients that others may be able to borrow for those weeks or even at some points those months where just nothing feels like it's sticking and it's very hard to drag yourself out of the house and into the gym or drag yourself out for a run?
Personally, I feel extremely lucky because I think I don't have that. But I guess that's a dark hole. We don't want to go. Mine comes from sort of like I have like a guilt complex. If I don't do it, I feel quite guilty. Whether that's good or bad, probably quite a negative thing, but it does work for me. Clients wise, they found it very beneficial that they paid for something, which is like, it sounds cliche because it was my business model, but if you invest in something, you're more likely to do it. So if you pay for a personal training session, you are more likely to go to the gym because you're like, fuck, I've spent 35, 40 quid on that. I don't want to lose that. So that's A. B can be like, again, the same thing, signing up for a class, like a gym class, because it's like, my name is actually there, so I best turn up. Otherwise, X, Y, and Z. So it's sort of like guilting yourself to go, because 9 times out of 10, once someone's actually in that gym, they enjoy it. The biggest barrier is just getting there. So again, let's not, blow too much smoke up James Smith, but he has that great rule of the 40, he calls it the 4-set rule. So if you're not feeling like you want to go to the gym, say on your program, it's bench press. You're going to go in, you're going to do 4 sets of bench press. And if you don't want to do any more, you can go. But I guarantee you, 85, 90% of the time, once you've done those 4 sets, you'll go, well, I suppose I could do 4 sets of, rows. And then I suppose I could do 4 sets of that. And before you know it, you've done your workout. But it's that initial just sort of barrier of getting in. So I think that is a really good tool, just that 3 to 4 set rule. Or actually like telling someone. Say if you live at home or you live with your partner or whoever you live with, I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow. Really? What time are you going? I'm going to go at 8 o'clock. All right. Lay your clothes out ready. Set your alarm for an hour early. Be like, right, I'm going to go to gym. Pull your gym clothes on. Just get in your car. All those little things. Break it down. Break the whole journey down. Okay, I'm going to make my coffee. I'm going to get in my car. I'll go to the gym. I'm going to go and I'm going to do my 4 sets. And if you do all that, you're almost like just guilting it in. Sometimes think the idea of going to the gym and doing a big workout can be very overwhelming. So my biggest bit of advice is just break it down into tiny little manageable chunks and then just tick them off one after the other. And even if you write it down, be like, put clothes on, make coffee, get into the car, go to the gym. You tick them off one by one. You'll feel like you've fucking run a marathon before you've even got there, and it feels great.
I literally do that on the days when, and it's not even just for gym, just for anything. Like I will, so episode 102, I had Rick Pastor on, who is a productivity expert, and he wrote a book called Grip, and I use the Grip methodology, which is like planning out fucking every hour of your day in a calendar. And I do that 9 times out of 10, and it works really well. But on the days when I'm just not really feeling like it, as silly as it makes me feel, it doesn't, but I say as silly as it sounds from the outside looking in, rather than having like client proposal 3 hours, video call 2 hours, I'll open up the app I use, Bear, which is like notes on iPhone, and I'll make a tick list, and it'll be like, get out of bed, put on clothes, brush teeth. And it sounds ridiculous, but it's mad how even if it's kind of invented momentum, because you're ticking off things that you were going to do anyway, 7 or 8 hours into that, you're like, I'm getting stuff done today now. Mm-hmm. And that's really interesting that you found that as well.
It's really interesting as well I can't remember where I heard it, but I heard it once and it really rings true, and I use it a lot now. is you wake up in the morning, not so much a minute, but when I was busy, you wake up in the morning and you sort of go, if I went to bed at the end of today, what would I look back on and think I've had a good day today? And it might be something small as I've been for a walked the dog, gone to the gym, had a good dinner. If I went to bed tonight and I've done those three, that's good. Or, for you it might be recorded a podcast, done a bit of work for 2 hours, etc. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be. You don't always have to tick off 10 or 11 things a day to have a quote unquote productive day. Whatever these people say, it can be small things, and like the same principle. Like write them down. If I can do these 3 things today, I've had a good day. And then you're never going to bed feeling like beat up and shit. I don't want this to turn into like a wellness podcast, but it works for the gym. What can you do in that session for you to walk away and go, I had a good session today? For some people, that is to get a sweat on. For some people, it's to lift heavy. For some people, it's even just to get into the gym. Whatever you can do, set yourself mini goals and just fucking smash them, and you will feel great. And then the ball gathers momentum, and before you know where you are.
And funnily enough, that's how I want to finish, because I want to ask you about this promised land, because it sounds like everything we've said sounds very complicated and granular, and like fucking hell, there's a lot to do here. I just clicked play on this video because I wanted to go to the gym a couple of times a week to build arms. There is a moment, is there not, when you've been going to the gym for a few months, where you've been eating the right food for a few months, where you've been getting enough sleep and drinking enough water and looking after yourself, where it stops becoming a big scary chore and it actually becomes almost like the lifeblood of your life and this incredibly positively addictive thing. Talk to me about the moment where you made the switch from, I know that you've been gymming and being into fitness for a long time from our first conversation, but either you or your clients, you must see this moment where something changes and it's not this chore, it's like this incredibly exciting, positive feedback loop that makes your life better by making your life better.
Oh fuck! I think it's finding what you enjoy, and I think to do that you have to do a lot of trial and error. All the clients that came to me had very similar goals: either get stronger or lose weight. It was 9 times one or the other, but the tools in which to get there are vastly different person to person. And finding what you enjoy is single-handedly the best thing you can do in the gym. If you love just to lift heavy to loud rock music and you find a gym which elicits that, that will become your church and your safe haven. Whereas if you love to get a sweat on and lift heavy and beat yourself up, a CrossFit gym might be the best place for you. Or, if you want something in the middle, there's a lot of gyms in the middle. If, like you say, if you like slipping under the radar, a pure gym or something where you put a code in might be for you. But once you find that place and you're comfortable going, the next step would then be just to find a program that works for you. Because actually following a program, I think, is so important and sort of almost too overlooked, because people don't want to spend a little bit of money because they're like, I could do this by myself. I did it for years. You find both of them and find those 2 bits of the jigsaw that fit together. At that moment, you will have that sort of semi-epiphany and you'll go, this is incredible. But it takes, and this is what I want people to understand, don't be put off if you don't find that within the first few months. Like, keep fucking chipping away and eventually it'll come and you'll find your space, you'll find your program, and hopefully you'll find that little same group of people as well, and it'll all just click into place. You'll have these great workouts, and it won't be every day, but you'll have these great workouts and you'll be like, I'm actually excited to come back here tomorrow. And you'll be annoyed that you have to take a rest day, but you should. Because you'll be like, yeah, I'm buzzing to go again on Friday or whatever. And then you can see how it, benefits your life. You might really enjoy hiking, and if you go to the gym, you'll be able to hike for longer because you have more energy and you're fitter. And then you're like, well, if I keep doing that, I can go for longer there. And it all sort of starts to spiral and in a really good way. But I think, find your place and find your program and then marry the two together and you'll be in for a wild ride.
And so you know what, I'm going to throw a bonus question in, because I know that when we do chapter 4, your life will again, for the 4th time, be very different. What do you think you've learned from the world of looking after yourself?
Fuck. Empathy. Empathy and it's I don't that's a good answer, but the cliche answer is that everybody is different and everybody's journey is different. Everyone requires different things. And not everyone can always, how can I phrase this? You might know what's right for someone, but sometimes they'll have to go right around the houses to figure out for themselves before they can actually action it. So it's just patience and empathy, I think, could be the two words that I would use. And anyone listening to this that's sort of struggling in their fitness journey and falling off, have patience with yourself as well, because it isn't easy. No one ever has found it easy. No one with a good body has found it easy. And if I can leave on one last point, it's probably the biggest thing that I've learned personally. And I know it's so easy to say and so hard to do, but try not to worry how you look in your body. Try to understand how you feel in it instead. And if you can do everything you need to do in the day and not have any overriding injuries and you're happy, then you're fucking winning. It doesn't matter if you have a six-pack or a big arse or big arms. Yeah, they're good. And people might give you a bit of validation for them, but if you can go to work, do what you need to do, come home, walk the dog, play with your kids, get a good night's sleep, eat some good food, you're fucking winning, aren't you? So if I could give one bit of advice, it's just to always chase that rather than the aesthetic side of things.
Amazing. That's a good place to finish. I think this has been a banger. I hope it has when people listen, but this is exactly what I wanted to get out of this. I wanted to create this kind of, there's nothing out there where you get everything that you need to know from someone who's actually been there and done it on how to actually start, which isn't just some sort of nonsense mechanism to sell. And so, yeah, thank you for this. I've really enjoyed it. And you know what? I'm excited for chapter 4. I don't know what we'll be chatting about on chapter 4, but I'm excited for it.
Me too. I also, yeah, it will be, it'll be weird. It's almost like documenting our lives through these podcasts. But one thing I just want to say before we go, if anyone out there is struggling, even though I don't do it anymore, if they want to message me, I will always point them in the direction of someone who can, as I do have some good contacts, or can just sort of push them into pages that they know. So same with you. You know, if you get anyone messaging you off this, we'll push you in the right direction of where we think you can get some help. Never be afraid to ask. But yeah, Sean, it's been splendid. It's been fun.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you again.